successfully devalued a $120 million industrial asset until it could be acquired for pennies on the dollar. For 8.5 years, these men used the law as a siege. They leveraged the Pitt River and Winnemem-Wintu tribes as a moral shield to make the land toxic to any outsider. Mayor Stearns played both sides, stringing Crystal Geyser along for tax revenue while allegedly meeting behind closed doors with ghost developers. When the trap was sprung in April of 2022, One Shasta LLC bought that $120 million site for just $7.1 million. Now, the sacred tribal partnership has vanished from the planning documents. The tribes gained no land, no rights, no protection. They were simply the infantry used to win a war for developers who never intended to leave the water in the ground. Looking at the building at 211 North, it's a masterclass in passive tax evasion. The assessor knowingly has it carved into 4 parcels. The common area shields the true value of the building that houses the clandestino, a business operating with a city license but no DBA filed with the county. It's a ghost business in a tax-shielded shell. The final irony, on January 13th, 2025, this city council passed resolution CCR 2504. They declared the land surplus and invoked AB 130 to fast-track 200 housing units. By doing this, they bypassed the very notice of preparation and tribal consultation they once demanded. Let's be clear about why they used AB 130 6 months prior to it being passed. They aren't just skipping an environmental impact report, they're skipping AB 52. By labeling this land a surplus infill, they legally erased the cultural resources from the map. They called the water sacred when it was a threat to their control. Now that it's a source of revenue for the One Shasta LLC subdivision, the sacred water is just another utility. And that's just what I wanted to bring up with you guys.
Thank you. Okay. Sounds like that warrants further discussion later. But any other public comment of items not on the agenda? Please step forward. Come on up.
Yeah. Hi, my name's Alan Roth, and I just want to bring up that I think we need rent control. I live in a mobile home park. I'm emailed, and in 4 years, my rent's gone up over $160 a month. And it's getting to be a little hard to make ends meet, on a fixed income and stuff. So just want to bring that up and let you know people need help.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Alan. And yeah, we've been talking about that with some city staff, so I think we'll continue to look at that and move forward. Appreciate you coming tonight to bring that up, but I'd like to chat further about that tomorrow if you are coming tomorrow. Any other public comment? I see some folks out there. Okay, sounds good. In that case, we will move on to council and staff comments.
Sure. I wanted to kind of give a rundown. I was appointed to State Revenue and Taxation Committee, one of 50 slots statewide. It was really interesting. Just like any other Brown Act committee, there was a lot of public comment before lobbyists and representatives of communities that have fulfillment center got up to speak, speaking passionately about why sales tax revenue needs to stay with those communities. And then when we got down to business, the invites. So another interesting observation is that communities that have fulfillment center were allowed more than one representative. And so I sat with a deputy city manager that is the location for the largest fulfillment center in the state. And and they see $1 billion in sales tax revenue a year. So why were we there? We're there to make a decision and attempt to pass, or send to legislative committee our recommendations on ways that we can come back to sharing sales tax that currently goes directly to communities with fulfillment centers. And the lobbyist for these large warehouses and fulfillment centers have done a great job of exploiting the Bradley-Burns Tax Act of 1955 that says that sales tax is shared at the point of negotiation. So we're trying to change that. We took a vote. It was pretty close, given the folks on the committee, that we would send to the legislature a 50-50 share of sales tax revenue that would be phased in over 5 years. Any communities that currently have a sales tax sharing agreement with the fulfillment center, those would stay in place, but no more. And the kicker here is that for this to pass, it requires a constitutional amendment. And the constitutional amendment has, right now, we don't have a definition for e-commerce. So we're letting things go that we should be taxing, like the sale of music or media transferred electronically, or software that's transferred electronically, and defining what we can collect sales tax on, and defining what where sales tax is to be collected. What we did pass that doesn't require a constitutional amendment is that the 1% that's collected from these fulfillment centers to communities that currently go to counties for them to distribute to the LTC or to certain other funds would where we voted to have that money come directly to cities. I think the thing that was fascinating is they laid out a study of cities, including an overlay by zip code of who would benefit and who wouldn't with a 50-50 return to sales tax coming to everybody. And especially communities like ours that don't have a lot of storefronts, a lot of basic goods that are purchased over the internet. We will see, this is with 50% of sales tax returned, we would see approximately 30% increase in our sales tax. 30% for half, that's half of what we should be seeing. There was a gentleman in the audience who, when we were listening to one of the cities complain about how this was just going to ruin their budget, from Pasadena, he said, well, I've been finance director for 40 years, and I was I was privy to one of the first fulfillment centers leaving, and that was Avon. And he said, we may do, and that's what we're going to do. And basically, if we're trying to be fair here with the phase-in and the 50-50 split. If the state, in its current configuration, has their way, they'd want to return it 100% to communities, so it's better for you to join on now. So with all that said, it's important, hopefully this does pass, but it also, this cut of the pie is going to continue to shift towards fulfillment centers. So, we have our own financial constraints, and we're trying to pass our sales tax measure where, as a reminder, this sales tax stays in the community for public safety. So that's that piece, and I just wanted to give you that update. And
appreciate that. What's any idea, I know you said it still has to pass, when is it first up for a vote among the state legislature? Is that this November, or?
I don't know, because it sits in committee. It's been discussed for a year now.
And just out of curiosity, is there anything that people can do? Call specific representatives, write to them?
Anything, anytime you can write your representative or, call the district, but call Washington as well to hammer this point home. In fact, anybody, a representative within the state of California, it'd be worth making that phone call to. But, we're also looking at an incumbent filling the vacated seat from LaMalfa and a new election. So we'll see what that brings as well.
To the chair.
Yeah, please.
So if I understood this correctly, we are already losing all of that sales tax to the fulfillment center.
More than 30%.
Say that again?
More than 30% on just, that is if, we're actually losing 60% if we got 100% of it back. Does that make sense?
So if this were to pass, we would get 30%.
Correct.
On top of what we're already getting?
Yep.
Okay, so it can't get worse.
Can't get worse, but,
Okay.
bad.
Except for the rate of online shopping increasing.
Yeah.
So like our overall percentage of online shopping is probably good.
And what you're saying is that if this passes and we become a part of this, then it will steadily increase to more of a 50-50 split?
It will, phased
Okay.
in over 5 years. The other, as I mentioned up front too, there, if we're able to start taxing the transfer of digital media and to tax, software that's transmitted, over the wire. The other piece is B2B sales aren't taxed at all. The only thing that is taxed is when it gets above $500,000. Now, that's a push that's also happening in parallel to capture some of that revenue because obvious reasons. So I know I've taken up a lot of time here. I can go into the landing. We had a good meeting with John and Brian Power, the Power Group this morning. They were here in person. We had Kim join us, Ken, and Casey was with us, and we talked about a lot of things, about affordable. We're talking again to Affordable Housing Development Corporation. We've got a meeting with Danco on Wednesday, and if we can't make that work, we're looking at potentially tiny home clusters. One of the things they're finding, they being the Powers Group, is that for them to move forward, they need site control, so we need to move forward with an agreement in some way that indicates that they've got site control, at least while we do our due diligence. We're for, getting infrastructure into the rest of the property. We've had a very cursory talk about forming Melrose District or a public facilities or community facilities district. And what I mentioned is one of the things that we can't have, there are ways to structure this, but it can't be formed in a way that if it fails for some reason, the city's on the hook. I don't know, Casey, if you want to expand on that, maybe I'm missing something.
No, I mean, I think that pretty much covers what was discussed in the meeting.
We've got a really solid site plan for the
Yeah.
east side, and talked about the infrastructure that we need. We have the water we need. It's we're going to need to look at sewer lines, not only to the east side property, but across the top of the west side of the landing as well to hit our upgraded sewers that run under I-5 into the plant.
One thing I do think that was important that was brought up, and this was actually brought up unprompted by the developers themselves, is that before they go forward with any development, particularly large-scale development, they would like to see a series of community meetings to get input from the community to ensure that it is something that just goes along with what people actually want to see, both aesthetically and for practical purposes as well. So they're not trying to come in and ram in some giant thing that people don't want.
That's the big stuff, unless people have questions for me.
Melissa? Or I guess any questions for what Todd was going on there? Council?
Thank you for supporting us.
Yeah, big thanks for going down and representing.
Eye-opening. Eye-opening to just the lack of, of not reading the room when every community that's there, except with fulfillment centers, is really struggling, and they're complaining about losing 50% of their revenue over a period of time. Now, we had a woman, a city manager from a community in Napa Valley, smaller place, not a lot of storefronts. It was the chuckle. She said, "We don't even have underwear." I mean, we all got her meaning, but it's true. That's a community that's going to see 30% of her sales tax revenue back, and that's the way it should be.
Oh, I was going to, Melissa or anybody else?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah, you got something.
Okay.
Yeah, please.
Are we,
Go.
okay,
Yeah,
sorry.
please.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to introduce our two new staff that have joined us in the Finance Department. If you guys want to come up. This is Lindsay, our new administrative supervisor. She took Jody Polk's position. She comes to us most recently from the county, and she'll be, the first few months, I think our priority is going to be kind of working on a lot of the HR things, and her and I getting in step with those type of items that we need to get brushed up on. And then Lori is our new accounting assistant, and she's primarily focused on the STR stuff right now. We'll be phasing into accounts payable, so you'll see checks, information about checks coming from her, and then probably doing some time entry for timekeeping and stuff. So she's taking over some of what Aaron and Priscilla were doing. So just wanted to welcome them, and if you guys have any questions or.
Well, welcome. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks for
welcome,
coming
guys.
in. Any questions for them? Welcome. Yeah, round of applause. Why not? Anything over here? No? All right. Okay, we'll move on to committee updates. Anything from DIAC?
I don't. DIAC meets Wednesday morning.
All right. Okay. Well, in that case, it sounds like we don't have any. However, as far as an update, I would like to remind anybody watching that we do have some vacancies on the Downtown Enhancement Advisory Committee and the Beautification Committee. So if you want to make Mount Shasta beautiful, this is a good chance. All right. Okay, on to the consent agenda. The city manager recommends approval of the following consent agenda items. All resolutions and ordinances on this agenda or added hereto shall be introduced or adopted as applicable by title only, and the full reading thereof is hereby waived. A, approval of minutes, January 12th, 2025, regular meeting. B, approval of disbursements, accounts payable, January 11th, 2026, and January 13th, 2026. Total gross payroll and taxes for the period ending January 22nd, 2026. C, monthly investment report. D, dissolution of Library Expansion Committee. E, taxi inspection ordinance, second reading.
Consent agenda items A through E, E being CCO by title only.
Second.
Okay, we've got all that. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Moving on, it is number 8. We've got School Board Recognition Month. The City Council has the opportunity to recognize the efforts of the school board. Todd?
Yes, so we want to approve a proclamation and our proclamation number is CCP 2601. And
Like me to read it?
do the honors? Yep.
Sure.
Okay.
All right. A proclamation of the City Council of the City of Mount Shasta to proclaim January 2026 as School Board Recognition Month in Mount Shasta. Whereas an excellent public education system is vital to the quality of life for all California citizens and communities, and whereas Board of Education members are committed to children, believe that all children can be successful learners and that the best education is tailored to the individual needs of the child, and whereas Board of Education members continue to advocate to best serve the children in our community each and every day, and whereas our public education system has faced unprecedented circumstances these past 5 years as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic and resulting learning loss, and whereas our local Board of Education continues to act to ensure children's academic, social, emotional, physical, and mental health needs are met so they can become their best selves, and whereas Board of Education members work closely with parents, school staff, educational professionals, and other community members to create the healthiest environments possible where all students can thrive. And whereas Board of Education members are responsible for building and maintaining the structure that provides a solid foundation for our school system. And whereas Board of Education members are strong advocates for public education and are responsible for communicating the needs of the school district to the public and the public's expectations to the district. And whereas the mission of public schools to meet the diverse educational needs of all children and to empower them to become competent, productive contributors to a democratic society and an ever-changing world is more poignant than ever before. Now, therefore, I, Casey Glaubman, do hereby declare my appreciation to the members of the Board of Education and proclaim the month of January 2026 as School Board Recognition Month in Mount Shasta. I urge all community members to join me in recognizing the dedication and hard work of local school board members and in working with them to create an education system that meets the needs of our children. All those in favor? Oh, nope, sorry. Yep. My mistake. Any public comment? Okay. Bring it back for council discussion.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Excellent. Okay, moving on to item number 9, city clock repairs. The
This is
John's
such a
favorite.
small town.
The pedestal clock and thermometer located in the downtown area have been inoperative for some time. Staff has compiled quotes for repair and replacement. Ken, you've got the floor. Still talk loud.
All right, Mayor and members of the council. As you know, the clock and thermometer have been inoperable for quite a while. Historically, we've been able to get the parts that were malfunctioning and send them off and get them rebuilt. We actually did that a couple of years ago, mailed them off to get them rebuilt. Took a year to get them back, and they still didn't work. Basically, and it's partly because the company we used, basically one individual, retired, company's gone out of business, they won't rebuild our parts anymore. Getting new parts was quite the hunt. We finally found a distributor that will get us new parts for the clock. And that's what I have the quote for, $3,660.38. The thermometer, there's nobody that sells parts for that thermometer. We also went in search of a new clock and thermometer. And while we can still buy new pedestal clocks similar to what we have, and I have a ballpark estimate of 40 to 50,000, I cannot find a distributor anywhere for a pedestal thermometer like the one we have. So I am looking for direction from the council on, do we want to at least keep the clock operational? And if so, some direction with Melissa's help on where to find the $3,600. And then maybe as far as the thermometer, do we want to leave it up as a display or just remove it and put it in storage?
To the chair.
Please, go ahead.
So on this one, can we just go kick this to DEAC and they can do a Back to the Future style Save the Clock Tower fundraiser? So we don't have to do the 3,600 or any money that way. We can let local citizens, if they truly want that clock to stay there, pay for it?
I would think that's an option.
I'll bring it to DEAC on Wednesday.
I think that would,
They're a creative bunch, and, if we can't figure out a way there,
do it on July 4th weekend, put a booth right there, see who wants to save a clock.
That's right, for the,
Get a bucket of manure, get
Before we
some
dive
skateboarders
into
going, do the
discuss-
whole,
Before we
do
dive
the whole
into
Back to the
discussion here,
Future.
John, any other questions?
I love that idea. Is there any money left over in that Prop 68 money that we had that went to parks, and does that count as a park?
by the time we get this reprogrammed, the way they're making us go through it one item by one item, we'll probably be picking out a funeral plot.
Okay,
That's enough.
that's enough.
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Ken, I understand you've had some experience with installing the parts in the past.
Yes, we have done that with Public Works crew.
And you have this statement in our summary that says they don't tend to last too long. Does that mean 20 minutes or 2 years or?
I don't have a crystal ball. I'd like to think we get a year or two out of them. I wouldn't bet good money on getting more than that.
Well, the reason I'm trying to get a sense of perspective, like in the past, did the parts last a year?
I will have to do more research on that. I know just over the years that clock it's gotten a lot of work from the Public Works crew, yet it still has spent more time not working than working.
And the reason, thank you, first of all, the reason I'm asking, and I think we're all kind of headed sort of down the same path, which is if for a stopgap fix for 3,600 and change, granted it's all unbudgeted, but versus 40 or 50,000, which if we have a 1% sales tax of an additional $1.6 million a year, we could probably fix the clock then. Versus
Now,
Just flat replace it.
right, yeah, get it right, get a new one right.
I would like to add that we've been rebuilding the parts quite a bit. Because we can rebuild it for a few hundred. We haven't done a lot of the plug and play where we actually replace the parts. So maybe I'm being a little too pessimistic on
So
how
this
long.
3,600 would be like new parts instead of refurbishing?
Yes.
Is what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
You're saying there's a chance.
Any other questions? Over here? How about members of the public? Comments, questions, clock related? All right. We'll bring it back for discussion now. Sure, yeah, please. Councilmember Collings.
What's the temperature? Just go ahead and, for 36 or less, apparently, 100 or less, and put, to try and get us through to when we would have more funding to replace and actually fix it with warranties and a whole new clock.
How about we just table it and see what DX says on Wednesday about, taking up the charge to get it fixed with donations instead of money we don't have.
That seemed pretty reasonable.
That's why I'm asking.
I'm kind of more in favor of removing them. What's the cost of doing that?
I believe we could do that with our Public Works crew at no cost.
Yeah, that's what I like.
Okay. How about over here?
Give the people a chance if they don't
Yeah,
want to
give
get
them
rid
a
of it.
chance.
Okay.
And if we have.
Truly save the clock tower time.
All right, so I move to table this item till a future date to be determined, while DEAC discusses possibilities for improvements of the clock and possibly the thermometer.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. For anyone from DEAC watching, I would like to say an option would be replacing it with an actual crystal ball, as mentioned by Ken.
Plenty of crystals.
I'm just saying.
Just put two bowls together.
All right, on to number 10, rescinding resolution CCR-18-44. It has been brought to the attention of staff that the city's current policy for the compensation of volunteer firefighters and station coverage pay does not satisfy the requirements set forth by CalPERS. And this one we're going to toss over to Melissa.
Thank you, Mayor. Several months ago, had initial review with the auditor on our expenses. He pulls a variety of expenses and looks at where they came from and where we're charging them. And one of the expenses that he pulled was the reimbursement to the on-call firefighters. And per the resolution previously, CCR 1844, what had been occurring was if an individual volunteer took 10 calls a month, they got $100. If they took between 11 and 20, they got $200. And between 21 or more, they got $300 a month. We haven't done this a lot, but the fire department has used this, and that is against the rules, the accounting rules for stipends. You're not allowed any longer, per the accounting rules, to pay a stipend to volunteers, but you can reimburse them for expenses specifically. So instead of saying if you take this many calls, you get $100, you could, if they turn in mileage logs, reimburse them for mileage, or if they needed a pair of boots to do the volunteering, we can reimburse. So it's a reimbursement-based payment rather than paying for a certain amount of calls that might not actually cost that much. So that was a recommendation of the auditor that we no longer do that. And then, as you're aware, I went to a PERS training back in February, and at that point it came to my attention around the coverage, the 24-hour coverage, because we're paying that through our payroll system and onboarding those people as actual employees. We have to follow the CalPERS requirements because we're a CalPERS member, contracted member. So in order to move forward with continuing to pay the 24-hour shift coverage, we would need to have a job description, put that on a publicly available job posting, and we haven't been doing that. So that was another one that we need to rescind and, figure out if that's something we want to continue. We would need to put the proper requirements in place.
I will add that there's nothing real until we have something inked, but the district has agreed to move this over to their payroll, which helps alleviate some of this. But again, it's not resolved until we have something in writing.
Okay, excellent. Any questions from this end over here? Jeffrey? No? How about over here? I have a question then. So it sounds like this is just something that we have to do to be in compliance with PERS anyway, so no big deal there. And then in order to start compensating via actual expenses, so that would be mileage, things like that, I have two questions on that. One, does that require, and maybe does that require a separate resolution that we have to pass then? Or is that, by rescinding this, are we automatically doing that?
I don't believe we would need a resolution to do that.
Okay.
That would be, us authorizing any other expense, just
Okay.
like we would. But from what I understand, they're going to move that over to the district, and so
Okay.
they'll be compensating the volunteers at this time.
Excellent. And just real quick then, just one last question, sorry. As our city manager noted, it's not in effect until it's inked, until the ink is dry or whatever. In the interim, when we do this and we are paying for it, any idea, and not to put you on the spot too much, but any idea the difference if it's likely to be more or less on a monthly basis? Just judging by the number of calls?
I wouldn't be able to answer that question, I'm sorry.
No problem. No, that's fine.
Yeah.
Okay, in that case, any members of the public? Oh, here we go.
I got a random question for that one. So if I'm hearing this right, which it almost sounds like volunteers, if there was 10 or 20 or 30 calls, would almost get paid a commission, something. And it would be like spending money. And now it sounds like it's changing towards, because you have to, I get that, into it's no longer fun spending pizza money. It's no longer pipeline, let's go on a date money. It sounds like it's turning into, now I gotta go buy these Walmart boots for $79, because I just did, and then turn it in, and now I don't get that. So I'm just saying, if I'm hearing that right, does that sound right? For the most part?
Yeah, I think so, yes.
Okay, so I like to just point out, number one, love our fire chief, ridiculous amount of awesomeness in that guy. Number two, all of our full-time staff in fire, next level services. Number three, every firefighter that's volunteer, my heart is so big for every last one of you guys. And this is now a morale thing. There's like a morale, a love for joining a fire department as a volunteer for the city, and now this little perk that, depending, that's nice, it helps. I can fill up my tank and go to work. I can go take my lady out on a little pipeline thing. And now it's kind of turning into something that it's going to be trickier to get more volunteers when the incentive is now moved over to something else that's more business related. And they already carry a lot of on their shoulders. It's just something worth considering, if I'm hearing it correctly. I understand your position. I just want to mention if I'm hearing it right.
Yeah, well, I mean, the one thing is that, as you mentioned earlier, it is required that we do this anyway. The other thing, too, I think if we're talking about boots that are worn on a fire, they might come out ahead in this one if they're anything like wildfire boots that are well over the $100 that you would receive for running up to 10 calls a month. So
There's some benefit.
they are. So it may come out, I'm not going to say they're going to come out ahead necessarily, but I don't think they're going to be losing out a significant sum of money. And I could be wrong about this, but I don't think many of the volunteers were running more than like 30 calls a month. I wouldn't think.
So I think we're missing something larger here. Afa, you probably know this, that we share services with the fire district. There is this city firefighters and then district firefighters. And what they've agreed to do, we don't have it signed yet, is that instead of the city picking up this additional cost, they would pick it up. It alleviates the need for the city to be paying the PERS. Everything you said is right.
Okay.
It's an incentive for people to keep coming back, and it's the right thing. But we don't have a choice.
Right.
It's just now that we need to get something inked with the district.
Right. I think it's just to get a firefighter's perspective up on this podium on live that, there's other firefighters thinking this thought as soon as this gets live. And, I'm sure if they were here, they would be asking the same clarity questions. Well, thank you. Appreciate you.
Thank you. All right. Let's see. We'll bring it back. Any other public comment out there? No? All right. We'll bring it back for discussion. This side. How about you over here? John?
Just want to clarify, we have to put this through, right? It's not really.
So, and just to be clear, there's two issues here, right? There's one that's an accounting issue, that's the call reimbursement. And if we don't fix that, then we'll have an audit finding. And then the other is the PERS issue, and that is if we continue to pay individuals and not report their PERS, then we're out of compliance. So.
good reason to do this.
All right, so we set to go. All right, so I'm going to move to approve resolution CCR-26-04? 04, yeah. A resolution of the City Council of the City of Mount Shasta rescinding resolution CCR-18-44.
All right, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Okay, moving on to number 11, the combination of the wastewater and drainage funds. A little background, while California law does permit the merging of wastewater and drainage funds, there are several restrictions on how these funds can be operated. Staff has compiled a list of legal requirements and the pros and cons for the council's consideration. Throw it over to Todd.
Okay. This proposal stemmed from our finance committee and from our auditor, who is a guru of combining our wastewater fund and our drainage fund, because they're basically one and the same. I mean, and Charles, our auditor, stated that he believes this is something that we can combine the two, and after doing research, what we learned is, yes, you can combine the two, but you need, if you did, you would need to strictly account for how spending went for, each pot of funds. If it's combined, you could be under one 218 process, or you can run a separate 218 process for drainage and one for sewer. The issue lies in a couple things. If you recall, our attempt to pass a drainage fee, there is an anomaly in the law that requires that if you want to pass it, people that want to vote yes on an increase to fees have to actually physically write a letter or show up in person at City Council saying, yes, I want to pay the additional fees. That's part of the reason why I believe the drainage fee didn't pass. So if we combine the two, then de facto sewer and drainage would require that measure. If we keep them separate, we still have the issue with drainage. Now, with that said, there was a law passed in 2018, SB 231, which the point of this was just to say this doesn't work, they're one system. And it passed. And the Howard Jarvis Center, taxpayer group, advocacy group, said if any community out there undertakes this, we will sue immediately, because the legislature doesn't have the power to change the definition of sewer. Only a state constitutional change will allow that. And so there have been communities that have said, okay, we're doing this. And there have been challenges. It's my understanding that one lower court ruling ruled in favor of it, another ruled against it, and they're waiting to be heard in Supreme Court, running it past our city attorney. He said it makes all sense to keep them separate until the law is settled. Hopefully we can get, a definitive ruling soon enough, because it would make things a heck of a lot easier.
To the chair.
Please.
I sent Todd a list of questions earlier today, which you answered very well. Thank you. One of which was, what was Kenny's side of this, and his was, don't do it.
Yeah.
One follow-up question. So under normal 218, the water sewer, if we do a Prop 218 study and it comes back saying that the current rate doesn't support the current infrastructure, then we get to raise rates in order to meet that. Why doesn't that work under this drainage function? If there was if it's governed by the same 218?
I have not had a response from John that I understand. I can.
You following what I'm
May
saying?
I join in?
Please,
So,
please do.
for the public and to reacquaint everyone, so 218 process for sewer, separate, as a separate enterprise fund, and for water as a separate enterprise fund. If there's a rate study, and the rate study says for not just infrastructure improvements, capital improvements, but for operations of those two particular fund, enterprise entities, rates have to go up. Then it goes to the rate holders for a protest vote, so to speak. In other words, half plus one of the rate payers of that particular category have to protest. And to remind everyone, the greatest rate negative vote was for sewer. The sewer, or no, I think it actually was for garbage, but, so that also qualifies for negative.
Yeah.
So there's three that are just require a negative vote. I think it was garbage came in at 149 negative votes. But either way, sewer was in the low 100s, garbage was in mid 100 negative votes, nowhere near half. And water was like 19 or something for the last one we did. So those are negative votes. For some reason, drainage has to be a positive vote. You have to have people send in their ballots, so to speak, saying they want this rate increase, and it has to pass by 50% plus one. The last one failed pretty decisively for drainage. I think it was just a way too big ask, and there was a lot of negative feelings about that one.
It wasn't a lot of money. It was, the fee is $1.
Well, no, for residential, I think for commercial, I think the real energy was from commercial
Yeah,
people
it was.
who did not want to pay what they thought was exorbitant rates for drainage, and they got a lot of letters out, and it came in negative. So if drainage is combined with the sewer enterprise zone, both would then have to be positive votes? Is that what you said before?
If they were combined under one 218 process, we can say it's a drainage and sewer fund, but we'd have to run two parallel 218 processes.
You have to do two separate ones, and would the drainage still have to be a positive vote?
Yeah.
Oh.
And that's the part I don't understand.
Yeah, then I don't know why we.
I think we
There's
need.
no real advantage to doing it other
I think
than-
we need to challenge that a little bit, because it's basically saying that it is a 218 functionality, but it has to be treated differently. So maybe.
Yeah, it was, I'll seek a better explanation.
Well, no,
It wasn't-
There's no doubt that for drainage, it has to be a positive vote. And Juliana, she explained this to me years ago when she moved up to Wairika.
Change that?
Oh, no, I don't think so.
Not without it. I think that's the part that needs a constitutional amendment.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. I know it would be helpful, but.
The
no.
part that keeps hindering me is no other city in Siskiyou County has a drainage fund. So somehow they are able to collect their fees in the sewer fund and use it for drainage. But from my understanding, we just set it up terribly.
I think there was something in there about how if it was set up originally
Yeah.
together, and unfortunately, once you're
San
in.
Francisco if it was set up and it was originally considered a combined system and combined in quotes, then that stood. San Francisco's one, and that can go under a normal 218 process. I don't know whose infinite wisdom this was. I mean, Councilman Stafford is right that It has to be a vote in the affirmative. It still has, 2 hearings worth of people that still can register protest votes. But for it to pass, you have to have more people coming out and saying for the affirmative, we want this. And it's just a much higher bar.
From an accounting standpoint, is there, other than the fact that we can't raise the money needed in this drainage fund, is there any huge headache to keeping them as 2 separate funds? I mean, no, it doesn't really affect things all that much.
No, I think that the difference maybe, and that's where I think Tessa's point is that you can't, I'm not sure what questions need to be asked maybe a little differently in that the way we have it set up right now, if an enterprise fund is losing money, the general fund has to pay the amount that the loss is. And I think the question becomes, if it's combined, do we not have to use general fund to cover that loss? We can use, wastewater funds until the drainage fund is no longer in the negative. I think that's the part that when we were having the conversation at our finance committee became the reason why we wanted to investigate the opportunity to combine the Fund 45 wastewater with Fund 30, the drainage. I think when we talk about systems, I don't understand, I don't understand the infrastructure. I would have to kind of understand that a little bit more as to, do they really function separately, or do they function as one, meaning that the drainage drains into the wastewater? I just don't, but I can keep them separate, no problem. Obviously that's been happening for years and years. And you just, we have to cover the losses with general fund. I could keep the costs and the revenue separate in one fund. That's easy enough as well. We do that with wastewater right now as far as the system versus the plant.
But correct me if, sorry to interrupt, but correct me if I'm wrong, that doesn't alleviate our issue. I mean, they still have to be kept separate in that fund. It's just, so it doesn't raise any more money. It doesn't raise us up to the level of actually getting what it costs in terms of being able to charge.
Well, it doesn't impact the 218 process, obviously, but and our 218 process need to be redone anyway, and so I don't know if there's an opportunity to, that's kind of, I think, the conversation's been having. But as far as if it's one fund and there's a loss, then does general fund need to be transferred? I think becomes somewhat the question if they're combined. I think
That would be a good follow-up question for Kenny, is if we combine them, can we do a transfer from sewer to, or, it just becomes commingled at that point? I'm assuming it's a no.
That's a hard no.
Yeah.
Ultimately, it comes down to this. I'll get a clarification. I'll bring it back next time. The timing, since we're running a sales tax measure, is ultimately we need to fix on drainage right away, but I don't know if we running the 2 in parallel makes sense, but we need to right-size this. And I think maybe part of the drainage fee, I know Councilman Stackflith has said maybe we take a lower amount as a run, but I think it might be that we need to reframe the issue in a different way. I mean, ultimately, we haven't raised this rate since the early 80s, and it's been benign neglect. And yes, it's a large increase, but I don't know, maybe we need to get creative. And, he's not under contract for anything related to a drainage fee, but I'll have a conversation with William Berry from WBC Campaigns on how he would approach it.
I got a question for you, and maybe this is just absolutely crazy, but given that you're saying Dunsmuir, Weed, and plenty of others have them combined into one, they were clearly set up that way, how difficult is it to abolish both of ours and start a new one
Yeah,
and
there has
from
to be a
scratch.
Well, I haven't talked to Wairika or Weed. I talked to Blake, the finance director in Dunsmuir. They have one fund, but they're tracking the 218 processes differently.
Okay.
I don't know if they're getting a different, if they didn't get the same advice on the affirmative vote. I don't know. I need to find out more. I'll bring back these 2 points, and I'll talk to Weed and Wairika.
Any other questions before I take it to the public? All right, any public comment on water systems?
Alpha. So I'm still learning this language, because this language is definitely Plutonian. Yeah, so I don't even know what a 50+1 vote really means. What does that really mean in layman's terms?
50% of the voters vote, and then one more makes it a majority.
Okay, so that doesn't mean the population of the town has, that is the whole.
Of those that vote, that actually
No, it's the
vote.
actual vote, people actually cast a ballot.
Okay, so I don't know what the average voter is.
So like, say it's 400
Right.
people voting.
So we need
it's
200.
201
Okay,
will allow a measure to pass.
got it. So going off of, I don't know, I know it's a quick fix that we're looking for, an abolishment thing, whatever. But creatively, I don't know how long it would take me. But I'm slightly confident that somehow, in some way, we could probably advertise and get enough people to bring in written votes, bring them in here, or write them up, or whatever. So I'm just saying that there's a small chance that all I need to know is what number do you need so that I can make that number
The
happen.
number is determined by the amount of people that are going to
Okay,
vote.
so if only
in an
20
election
people
like
vote,
this one, in an
can-
election like this one, it's probably going to be a pretty high amount of people voting.
No.
You don't think so in 2026?
No, this is not a vote.
Okay,
No, you send out a notice saying, we're introducing a new rate, which we did for the waste, for the storm drains.
Oh, I understand.
And people sent in their pro vote and con vote, and the con votes won.
Got it.
But it was more like a letter.
Yeah.
But actually, I think we actually sent out a ballot, didn't we? We sent out a no
did.
and yes, and it got mailed in, or dropped off here, or dropped off at City Hall. But it
question.
wasn't like a general election. It was,
A question I have, though, is if we run it, since it is a 218 process, and we had Ref Telly's, a national expert on, really, really detailed analysis on what we need to right-size us. If we go through a 218 process and ask for less money, is that even valid? Because we're telling the community what we need, and then we're
But
not.
that study included substantial capital improvements to
It
the
did.
system, and I'm reduced to just hoping that we can raise enough funds to cover the operational expenses, and simple repairs as needed.
But what
So
you're
$1 not doing it, is it going to take $5 or 10 per month per ratepayer? That type of thing.
Todd, what you're saying is if the number comes out to be 80, we can't hedge it and say we'll only
Yeah.
take 20.
That's what I'm wondering. I don't know, but that's what comes to mind for me.
Like you can't ask for more than it costs, but you're saying you can't ask for less
You can't
necessarily
ask
either,
if
once you
you're-
know the number.
If we know what the number
Once
is.
you do the rate study,
Right, we're locked in.
that's the one that has to go up for a vote. There's some risk there, yeah.
Yeah, but if we don't do it, we're still losing that money either way.
If you don't do it, the general fund is paying for it.
Yep.
okay, thank you.
I have faith in you, Alpha.
Thanks, Alpha. You'll be hearing from us. Bring it. Any other public comment out there for this? Yeah, she sounds like she's got something to say. Okay, we'll bring it back to council then for discussion here. What are we thinking?
Chair.
Please, go ahead.
If we're waiting for some more opinions from Kenny, we might as well table it.
Yeah.
I think That's the wise thing. So I'll move to continue this to a date to be determined, hopefully by mid-year, say June 30th.
Or much sooner.
Yeah.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed or abstain? Okay. All right. At this point, any council reports on attendance at appointed or outside meetings?
No, I got one tomorrow.
You going tomorrow?
We went to the Lola dinner. Mount Shasta was well attended. We had a great table with the city of Dunsmuir, and yeah, it was a good time.
Indeed, and I believe this may have happened after your departure, but I may have inadvertently offered Mount Shasta to host the next one on April 8th. So that'll be happening on April 8th, and it's going to be great.
Hilarious.
Yep. So we're on it.
I would just add that we had a well-attended Rotary Club meeting where, I went over the various initiatives that we're working on, the need for the sales tax measure, and answered a whole host of questions. And I'm sure for a lot of people, I went into way too much detail. For others, probably not enough. And also, had the same conversation at the monthly Chamber of Commerce lunch.
Awesome. Thanks. Anybody? Anybody else? Cool. All right, let's move on to number 13 here. We got some future agenda items. Starting down here, we got one. Please, Councilmember Collings.
I'm trying to get a half-year financial update.
Yeah, my plan, I'm meeting with staff to go over budget in their departments this week and early next week. And so my plan was to bring back a general fund budget review at a February meeting. And that might be the second meeting in February. I have a little bit of out time early in February. And then after that, I would plan to bring the enterprise fund information back, hopefully in March.
Excellent. Now we'll get that on there. Anything else? How about over here? One thing I would like to get added on there, I guess in the next 60 to 90 days, is I'd like to bring back the rent control, rent stabilization, rent control specifically for the mobile home park. I guess Shadow Horizons is really the only one affected within city limits, but to get that looked at again. Anything else? Okay. All right. Meeting adjourned.